I arrived at the cabin in the Appalachian Mountains, feeling the weight of the world slowly lift from my shoulders. I was a nature photographer, accustomed to long treks into the wilderness, but this retreat felt different, peaceful and secluded in ways that almost felt too quiet. The cabin sat at the edge of an old meadow. The land stretched out before me like an untouched canvas. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, the kind of stillness you can only find in remote places, away from the reach of modern civilization. The small, dilapidated cabin was cozy enough, and I could already imagine the photos I'd capture the morning light filtering through the trees. As I settled in, unpacking my gear and stretching my legs after the long drive, I couldn't shake the sense that something was off about the place. It wasn't the isolation, it was the land itself. The meadow beyond the cabin had an unsettling energy to it, like it was holding on to something long buried. But I dismissed the feeling, as I had so many other eerie sensations over the years. After all, I was here for a retreat, to capture the beauty of nature, not to indulge in superstitions. The sun began to set earlier than expected, and as twilight deepened into night, I prepared to head to bed. I had no plans to venture out after dark. I was in the mood for a night hike. But then, as I lay in bed with only the quiet murmur of the woods outside, I was suddenly startled awake by a sound, a soft humming, distant yet unmistakable. The melody was strange, almost as if it were coming from the very earth itself. And then there were footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving just outside my window. At first, I thought it might be an animal, but the cadence of the steps was too measured, too human. My heart pounded in my chest, and I held my breath, straining to hear. The footsteps circled the cabin, coming closer, then moving away, only to return. The humming, a low and mournful tune, seemed to grow louder, as though it was calling to me. My instincts screamed at me to stay hidden, but fear rooted me in place, my mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. The noise finally ceased, and the silence returned. I waited, heart hammering, until I couldn't stand it any longer. I grabbed my camera. If I was going to survive this, I needed proof. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was imagining things. But the air felt thick with something, an unseen presence that wouldn't let go. I crept to the window, peering out into the night. The meadow was bathed in pale moonlight, its tall grass swaying gently in the wind. There was nothing there. No sign of the footsteps, no humming, only the stillness of the night. But the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Hesitantly, I retreated back to my bed, trying to calm myself, but sleep would not come. The next morning, I awoke with a pounding headache, my eyes swollen from a restless night. As I stepped outside to get some fresh air, I noticed something strange near the edge of the meadow. Symbols etched deeply into the earth. Circles and lines, almost like a language I couldn't decipher. They hadn't been there the day before. My breath caught in my throat as I knelt down, tracing the shapes with my fingers. What kind of person or thing had made these markings? Just then, a voice startled me. "You saw them, didn't you?" I turned to find an elderly man standing a few paces away, his face weathered with age and experience. He wore a dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach churn. "Arthur," he introduced himself. "I live up the road. Been here all my life. You do well to stay away from that meadow, miss." I stood, trying to make sense of his words. "What do you mean? What is that?" I gestured toward the symbols. He shook his head, a grim look settling over his face. "That ground is cursed. Used to be a village there. A long time ago, before the plague came, the villagers buried their dead in that meadow. It's said that when the last of them died, the land itself became tainted. No one should go there after dark." I laughed nervously, brushing off his words. "I'm sure it's just some local folklore. The markings are probably just animal tracks or something." Arthur's eyes narrowed. "You think that's just some old superstition?" "I've seen it, miss. People who go into that meadow, they don't come back the same. Some vanish completely. Others, they're changed, marked by something that's not quite human." I didn't know how to respond, but I smiled politely. thinking he was just another eccentric mountain man with a fondness for ghost stories. "I'll be fine. I'm just here to take some pictures. Nature's peaceful, you know?" Arthur's gaze softened, but there was a deep sadness in his eyes. "Maybe so, but the spirits don't care about peaceful. You've been warned." I nodded, trying to put the conversation behind me, though I couldn't shake the unease in my gut. The rest of the day passed quietly, though the sounds from the previous night lingered in the back of my mind. And that evening, when darkness fell, the noises returned, soft humming and footsteps outside my window. This time, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my camera and went outside, determined to capture whatever was causing it. But as I stepped into the meadow, the air grew colder, and the moon seemed to vanish behind a thick cloud cover. I scanned the area, but there was no sign of anything unusual. The grass swayed gently in the breeze, nothing more. But something in the air had shifted. My camera's screen flickered, and when I reviewed the pictures, my blood ran cold. In every shot, shadows had appeared, dark and twisted shapes that resembled distorted faces. Faces that weren't there when I took the photo. I turned and ran back to the cabin, but the shadows seemed to follow me. They whispered my name, faint and breathless, echoing in the darkness. I slammed the door shut and locked it, but the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, closer, until it felt like the walls themselves were breathing. That night, I woke again to the sound of my name. Only this time, the shadows in the room were moving. They slithered along the walls, creeping toward me. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to scream, unable to escape. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the whispers turned into guttural voices, repeating my name over and over. I fled the cabin, not caring where I was going, only that I had to get away from those voices. I stumbled through the woods until I reached Arthur's house, my heart pounding in my chest. Arthur opened the door before I could knock, as though he had been expecting me. "You've seen it, haven't you?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. "The spirits, they need a new guardian." "What are you talking about?" I gasped, panic rising in my chest. Arthur stepped aside, motioning for me to enter. "You've been chosen. The spirits of the old village, they're restless. They've been waiting for a new protector, someone to watch over the cursed ground. You've disturbed them, and now they won't let you go." I shook my head, desperate to deny his words. "This is insane. I'm not staying here. I'm leaving. I don't care what happens. I'm getting out of here." But Arthur only looked at me with sad, knowing eyes. "You can't leave. Not anymore. They've marked you, Laura. They've already claimed you." And then, just like that, the shadows surged, surrounding me, their whispers turning into a deafening scream. They dragged me away from the cabin, back to the meadow, where the earth seemed to open up to swallow me whole. And as my scream echoed to the woods, I became the new spectral guardian, bound to the cursed land, trapped forever between the world of the living and the dead. The sun rose over Hilltop Ridge, casting a pale light across the campus, but it did little to dispel the dread that lingered in the pit of my stomach. I was alone now, alone and broken. Emily had vanished into the earth, swallowed whole by the darkness beneath the cemetery. I kept asking myself, over and over, how it had happened, why it had happened, but no answer ever came. The chill from the night before had followed me into the morning, settling deep in my bones. I couldn't stop thinking about her. I couldn't stop seeing her face, her confused, terrified eyes, the way her hand had reached out for me. But I couldn't reach her in time. She was gone. All that was left of her was a broken phone, the cracked screen, and that damned picture. I'd stared at it 100 times since I'd found it, tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Emily, standing there, smiling that usual smile of hers, but behind her, barely visible, there was a figure, tall, indistinct, but with eyes that glowed, faint but unmistakable. And that whisper, "Get out!" My heart thudded in my chest as I remembered the sound of it, the breathless whisper that seemed to crawl under my skin, making every hair stand on end. I couldn't remember when it started or how long it had gone on, but it was there, always there, a presence, a force, Something I couldn't explain, but I knew it wasn't something we were supposed to encounter. Something had woken when we stepped into that graveyard. Something ancient, something that didn't want us there. I thought of the grave we had knelt beside. Eleanor Forsyth. The name felt wrong now, somehow, though I couldn't quite place why. I remembered the way the earth had seemed to shift beneath it, as if it were disturbed, as if something had tried to claw its way out. And when I touched the stone, I couldn't shake the sensation that something had touched me back. A coldness, like ice spreading from my fingers up my arm. I had to go back. I didn't know why, but I had to. I needed to know what had happened to Emily, needed to understand what that thing was, what it had done to her. I couldn't just go on pretending everything was normal. I couldn't live with the guilt of not having been able to save her. I made my way to the cemetery alone that night, my heart pounding in my chest. The campus was eerily quiet as I walked through the streets, the wind biting at my face, the shadows stretching long and ominous across the ground. Every step seemed to echo in the silence, a constant reminder that something was wrong, deeply wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The gates were as they had been the night before, old, rusted, and foreboding. I pushed through the same hole in the iron, the one that Emily and I had slipped through together. My fingers brushed against the cold metal, and the sense of unease that had gnawed at me all day intensified. I couldn't shake the thought that the cemetery was watching me, that something in the darkness was waiting for me to make the next move. I ventured deeper into the graveyard, the mist curling around my ankles, my breath coming in quick bursts. The tombstones stood like silent sentinels, their names faded and forgotten by time. I could still feel that oppressive silence, the weight of something ancient pressing down on me, urging me to turn back. But I couldn't. I couldn't leave until I knew what had happened to Emily. I reached the grave where we had found the stone, the one with Eleanor Forsyth's name carved into it. The earth around it was still disturbed, just as it had been the night before. My fingers hovered over the stone again, the cold seeping into my skin. The whisper returned, this time louder, sharper, as though it were coming from inside my mind. Get out. The voice wasn't just a whisper anymore, it was a command, a warning. I jumped back, my heart hammering in my chest. I tried to steady my breathing, but it was impossible. The air had thickened, becoming heavier, as though the very atmosphere was pressing in on me. I could feel something watching, something waiting, and then, in the distance, I saw it, the figure. It was standing in the same place where it had appeared the night before, but this time it was closer. I could make out more details now. Its form was tall and thin, its outline barely visible in the shadows. But its eyes, those eyes, glowed, faint but unmistakable, like twin orbs of light in the darkness. They were fixed on me, and I couldn't move. My body felt frozen, like I was rooted to the spot, unable to break free from its gaze. The whisper came again, louder now. Leave. I tried to turn and run, but my legs wouldn't move. The figure took a step forward, and the ground beneath me shifted. It was as if the earth itself was alive and angry. The cemetery seemed to pulse with a low, vibrating hum, and then the ground cracked open beneath my feet. I barely had time to scream before I was falling into the dark abyss below. I landed hard on cold stone, gasping for air, my vision spinning. I could feel the presence surrounding me, closing in on me from all sides. I scrambled to my feet, my heart racing, my pulse deafening in my ears. I was in a tomb, I realized, a place beneath the earth, a place where the dead had been buried long ago. But it wasn't just a tomb. It was something else, something worse. The walls of the crypt seemed to pulse with life, a sickening, rhythmic beat that reverberated through my body. And then I saw it. The figure was standing in front of me, its glowing eyes burning into mine. It was no longer just a shadow, no longer just a presence. It was real, tangible, and it was smiling. Its smile stretched wide, impossibly wide, revealing teeth that were sharp, jagged, and dripping with something dark. It opened its mouth, and the whisper that I had heard so many times before came again. But this time it was a scream, a guttural, inhuman scream that ripped through my skull. And then it spoke, its voice not just in my ears, but inside my mind. You shouldn't have come here. I tried to scream, tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. It was as if the air itself had turned to stone, trapping me, suffocating me. And all around me, I could hear the faint whispers, the voices of the dead, calling out from the darkness. I told you to leave. The figure's hand reached out toward me, its fingers long and twisted, and as it touched my skin, I felt the cold seep into my veins, freezing me from the inside out. The last thing I heard before the darkness consumed me was the sound of Emily's voice, faint but clear. Get out, and then everything went black.